There's a chance that you found this channel from my Masked 100 Baby Challenge, which I started back in March when Infants came out. I'm actually still playing it though, and we're 71 babies through, so we are past halfway now, which is great, and on to the final stretch. But we're on generation 3 of my matriarchs. We actually just had our 4th matriarch yesterday. Their name's Nancy. But because I have so much time in the save file, we've actually been able to accrue so much money in household finances. Our house is worth around 130,000 simoleons now, and we had about 35,000 sitting in our bank account, which is such a great position to be in the 100 Baby Challenge. But after For Rent came out, I thought it would be an amazing side business to start giving my family rentals. So I first of all made them a ranch and an entire ranch family to rent from them, which was so much fun. And so in this video, I'm going to be speed building a sage green rental property for my 100 Baby Challenge to rent out. And if you like this video and The Sims 4, please don't forget to subscribe because we are so close to 10,000 subscribers on this channel. It would be so amazing to hit that really soon. So thank you so much if you have already subscribed, and if you do go on to subscribe, you're awesome. I built this house on Twitch, which is also where I live stream all of my 100 Baby Challenge episodes, so I spent a bit of time discussing with my chat what we thought we could make for this, and we decided on this 20 by 30 lot in Evergreen Harbour. I often prefer building in portrait lots because then you have the house at the front and the garden at the back, and it all makes a lot of sense, but there's something about this lot in Evergreen Harbour that I love building landscape on, so I decided to do that again, and for some reason I immediately decided that the left back side was going to be where the house is, and I don't know why, but I actually think that that kind of worked. It was a split-second decision that I made right at the start, and I carried it all the way through without even questioning, and I kind of love how that ended up. I also had this tiny little thought that really consumed me, that I wanted a growing garden, and what I meant by that was an enclosed space that you could only access through the kitchen, go down a couple of stairs, and then have loads of planters for your herbs and your vegetables and your fruits that you could then cut and bring up into your kitchen to then make your food with fresh produce. I don't know why that consumed me so much, but it really did from the start. So that's going in the back left corner, bordered by all the fencing. It really set the tone for the way that the floor plan had to work out because it meant that the kitchen had to be at the back and couldn't be anywhere else. But sometimes having an overarching aim, no matter how small or weird or wacky it is in a house, can really help you at the start to understand what you want to do, and it kind of solidifies some of your plans from the get-go. So this house did take a couple of iterations to get the way that I wanted, but I ended up on a shell fairly quickly. And once I had the shell down, it did take a little bit for me to get the floor plan right. I think I was really struggling with where the stair placement should be and giving enough space on the lower floor around the stairs to have proper rooms. And of course the kitchen had to be at the back of the house, so that was already a done deal, which meant that fitting all of the other things in was a little bit harder. But I finally got there with a floor plan, and then the roofing was pretty easy and straightforward. Roofing I know a lot of people struggle with, but I keep it really simple and just use the gabled roofs as much as possible, and I've always found that that kind of works. I am branching out with a couple of different roof styles now, and I think that pairing them together is what really makes me struggle. But I decided to not go too fancy with the roofing, so it didn't take me too long to complete. For the outside, I knew I wanted to use the base game sage green paneling. This was of course a sage green house, so it had to have sage green on the outside. And the fact that this paneling is so beautiful but also base game just makes it absolutely perfect. I didn't quite know how to organize the sage green at first, and it did take me a couple of tries, but I ended up pairing it with this cottage living white brick, which I absolutely love as a combination, and I think it really makes it look warm and homely, and you immediately get that this is a sage green house, which definitely there's no question about when we get into the furnishing on the inside, because everything that I could possibly make sage green, I did. If you watched my last video, I was kind of having a crisis of what to do in The Sims with For Rent being so glitchy and unplayable, and sage green has been my favorite color for a couple of years now, so this is not my first sage green house. But I find that if I'm having a crisis with what to do in The Sims, it is so useful and easy to go back to what you know that you're going to enjoy. So doing a suburban in my favorite color on a landscape lot in Evergreen Harbour, which I love building in, was kind of the perfect get back into it that I needed, because I knew that I couldn't go wrong and I was just gonna like what came about. And the fact that it was a rental for my long-standing 100 Baby save made it even better. So I did really enjoy doing this house, and I think it did spark a little bit more creativity for me, because sometimes the most fun things are doing what's easiest. Now, I'm not saying that this was an easy build, because I did initially set myself a 30k budget. That was all that my 100 Baby Challenge family had in their bank account, so it made sense to do something within their budget, but I actually ended up loving this build so much that I kinda blew the budget. So you're seeing me now placing all of the basic furniture, just a rug, just a sofa, just a coffee table with a TV on, literally nothing else in the living room, and same for all of the other rooms. They just got literally the bare bones for what a sim would need to survive in this house, because because the floor plan ended up being way too big. And that was my fault from the start. I should have really made it a lot smaller when I had the opportunity, when I was just building the shell. And I'm not quite sure why I didn't. I think the growing garden in my head really kind of skewed me to making a bigger property, and I wanted an upstairs, and it ended up being 2 bedrooms. The bedrooms aren't huge, but I did put 2 bedrooms in. It was supposed to be a tiny home, and it really, really did not turn out to be one, but I like what we came up with in the end, and blowing the budget just made it more fun for me. However, this is not the way that I like to build. Putting in the bare basics of each room for every room in the house, and then circling back to add clutter if you've got the budget is really not how I like to build. I prefer to build one room at a time from start to finish of the room, from the floorings to the walls to the furniture to all of the clutter in that room, and then going on to the next room. And I often go from the front of the house all the way through the downstairs, then upstairs, and all the way through the upstairs before finishing. So building like this and then having to circle back and clutter everything when I decided to blow through the budget was really not what I wanted to do. But when you change your plans halfway through, sometimes that just happens. And to be honest, all of the time that I was putting in the basic furniture, I was just so sad that I couldn't do the house justice because I wasn't able to do any of the clutter. I had to forego things like the sage green overhead cabinets in the kitchen, which I loved the look of, and just all the things that make a house have personality for me, I couldn't add in because I didn't have the money. So going back around and being able to put all of those things that I've been thinking in my head that I wanted, but I couldn't afford, was just so good at the end. And it wasn't out of our affordability range, considering my sim makes 25,000 simoleons a week. And their bills are only around 5.5k, I think. So the extra 35,000 that we had to find in order to afford this rental was around 10 sim days worth of playtime, which yesterday we actually hit and we were able to buy this rental. So it is now part of our family. And I'm hoping now we can work on our maintenance score to give it a 5-star rental rating, which should really push up the rental amount that we can ask for, meaning that we could make a really good profit on this. So hopefully our finances will just continue to spiral and we might be able to get more rental units in the future. The only trouble is I know that this pack is really glitchy, and if you go over 6 rental units, people have been having really massive problems with their save files. So I think I might put maybe 2 more in and then just use any remaining money we have to upgrade our rentals that we already have, or give them a massive mansion to live in. I'm not sure. This was one of the rental scenarios that I was so excited to play through when For Rent got announced. So I've really got my fingers and toes crossed that this save file stays working with these rental properties in it. But just having a reason to create more properties on a budget is just so cool, and I had so much fun making this sage green house. To be honest, I'm really not sure if having all of those clutter items and the extra things actually pushed up the rental price that we ended up achieving for this, because the rental price for this fully furnished kitted out house ended up being really low. I think I could get about 273 simoleons a day for it, which wasn't as I expected. I thought it would be a lot more, because in my 4-star ranch, which was arguably worse than this house ended up being, I could get around 800 simoleons a day for it. So this one being 270 was a really big shock when I ended up putting it fully finished on the market. It feels a little bit low, and the decorations that I ended up buying to blow the budget at the end, I don't think helped in any way, but it helped me feel better about it and a better builder. But in a business decision, if you were actually doing this for profit, I don't think it helped. I think one of the hardest rooms to go back and clutter was actually the living room, because it was really difficult with all of the windows and then the archway and the doorway. I had to make sure that I was keeping enough room for all of my Sims to be able to get through, but also making it look good and full. So we ended up going for bookshelves, which are actually from growing together between the door and the archway. Because they're curved from the wall, it didn't look so sharp and out of place. So I really like that we have those bookshelves for walls like this. And then I gave them a little bit more space by pushing the sofa to the back wall. But all in all, I did keep it fairly simple with just some curtains and an extra coffee table with a couple of bits of clutter. To be honest, whilst I knew I was going to blow the budget, I didn't want to go too far out, because my sim makes around 5,000 simoleons a day, and she does work 5 days a week because she's level 10 of the military career. So she's not strapped for making more money, but if I had made this a 120,000 simoleon house, I know that we would have never got to purchase it. So whilst I did have a budget, I still didn't want to be outlandish, and it was a rental, so I feel like people would make their own stamp on things anyway. That's in my head. I know they don't actually do that in The Sims, but it's kind of a nice thing to think about, that if you're moving into a furnished house, you don't want the previous person's clutter there, even though I do love the way clutter looks all the time. So I do feel like this house isn't as full as if I just made it for no reason, but I think that that fits with the story. Now this house was actually made over 2 streams. Each stream is around 2.5 hours of playing if you want to keep up with how long this was taking me. It didn't actually take the full length of the second stream, so maybe an hour and a half extra, giving an entire build time of around 4 hours. But bear in mind that I do build much slower whilst I am streaming because there's so much to keep on top of with also having a beautiful chat to talk to. So this probably could have taken me around 3 hours if I hadn't been streaming, but I just have so much more fun and I'm so much more creative if I am streaming, even though if I wasn't, it would take me a lot less time. That's all to say that at the start of the second stream, I decided to do the outside of this property before finishing the cluttering of the inside and the upstairs. So I thought for the landscape area, which had the entryway on the side, it'd be kind of cool to do a fenced in gravel driveway with a couple of cars. Now these cars are actually just toy cars from base game sized up with the square brackets key, and I love doing this trick because you can get better quality cars in debug, but searching through debug is such an annoying process and it always seems to infiltrate my other catalog sections, which I really don't enjoy, so I honestly never use debug, and this little car trick is so much simpler and quicker, and the cars don't look that bad. Also, just a little tip, if you want to make something look a little bit less 3D, shading with terrain tools is the perfect thing to do. So I ended up making a couple of darker lines that looked like the cars had been going in and out of the driveway and that people had been stomping between the front door and the gate to the garden. And to me, shading just makes it feel like it comes alive, so I do love doing it and I do a lot of shading. Yes, the effects might look minimal, but to me it makes everything look 3D and not just plopped on the ground, but actually kind of natural. So pretty much my rule is if it touches the ground, it needs terrain paint underneath it. So that includes the house, fences, any kids' play toys, any bushes, any landscaping. They all get little bits of shading underneath and I just love it. It's definitely a step that I will never miss despite it being so minimal. Because I was still trying to keep to a fairly reasonable budget, the landscaping isn't as outlandish and crazy as I would usually make it, and it's a little bit more manicured and conservative, which I'm honestly not used to in landscaping, but I kind of like how it turned out. For me, I'm really not into plants and gardening. I end up killing every single houseplant that comes into contact with me. Case in point for this plant up here, look at all that dead growth. I need to water it. I'm so sorry. I don't know what to do with this plant anymore, to be honest. It's kind of just been left. So for me, a garden like this would actually be kind of one of my dream gardens because it feels really low maintenance, and I'm thinking that if you're renting a property, you probably don't want to spend your time looking after plants that aren't even yours. So it makes a lot of sense for a renter, especially as this family also has kids, that they wouldn't have such a high maintenance garden that I usually put in. Now I know all of this is just storytelling and not at all applicable for the game, but I do kind of like just giving my Sims backstories, even renters, and I might end up making a custom household for this property that really fits the needs. Maybe it's 2 parents with their little child. I think it's really fun to do that in CAS, especially with my Twitch community always having so many opinions and building backstories with me. So I think I might still do that and make sure the renters actually fit the house that I've built for them. It's what I ended up doing with my ranch house that I rented out, and it was one of my favorite things to make horses and dogs and cats that would actually go into the ranch that I made. And now every time I go into that rental, I get to interact with the household that I made in CAS, and it's just really special. I finished up the outside with this growing garden, and I love how this turned out. It was kind of the focal point for the entirety of the build and the shell making right at the start, so getting to actually put it in at the end was really lovely, and it was kind of my entire vision coming together. And whilst my renters are probably never going to use it, it just feels like a fun thing that they could have their own herbs and fruits and vegetables just outside their kitchen door and then use them in their meals. It just creates another element of lore, and it's not something that I often do in houses, so this one was really fun. I finished up the sage green build with the last few bits of clutter in the rooms that I hadn't gone back to, and I gave the kids' room so much more personality than it had when I was on that 30k budget, making it a room that I was proud of rather than just being functional. And then when I saw the final budget and I knew that I had a little bit more to play with that would still be reasonable for me to afford in the future, I ended up putting a bit more landscaping in, and I raised the pool by 1 foundation level, which I believe they can still get in, but I just felt a little bit more luxurious and cool. And then after doing a little bit more shading with terrain paint, the house was pretty much done, and it came out at 64,000 simoleons. So yes, that is over double the 30k budget that I originally had, but I'm so much more proud of this house and I think it looks so much better. I hope you enjoyed watching the speed build come together. This house is now available on my gallery, which is just HeppiSims, should you want to download it. Let me know your thoughts about this build in the comments down below, or any suggestions you have for other things I should should try and make in The Sims. And if you're not already subscribed, please do go ahead and click the subscribe button. It would help me out a bunch, and we are so close to 10,000 subscribers. It would be amazing to hit that. And I am really trying to bring a lot more content to this channel, so I will see you in my next video.